The coming month, December 2023, wraps the year off with a sweet ending that we're really looking forward to. But before we get to that, there's some rugged territory to traverse. Venus, planet of unification, beauty, and attraction, will be moving out of her domicile of Libra and into the deep and clear-sighted waters of Scorpio. There'll be another strongly Mars-influenced new moon, this time in Sagittarius, and then we'll see a Mercury retrograde that promises a mix of constructive revisions to the plan and less constructive communication breakdowns. But the year ends with what look like some genuinely nice moments, including one of the most pleasant-looking full moons we've seen all year, and the direct station and empowerment of Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, growth, and optimism. So welcome to another World Astrology Report forecast episode, in which I will be joined as ever by Steph, Koyfman, and SJ Anderson to provide you with a concise roundup of what the month promises for you and for the wider world. So without further ado, let's get into this. Before we look at what's coming in December, let's look back at the astrology and world events of November. As we suspected, November really did feel like a month in which there was a profound shift, particularly in terms of global sentiment around the subject of Israel and Palestine.
On the day of Saturn's direct station on November 4th, there were protests in major cities all over the world in solidarity with Palestine. And that wasn't the only form of direct action that sort of took on the form of Saturn in Pisces. There were activists in Tacoma and Oakland. There were dock workers in Barcelona who got in the way of military supply ships that they believed were sending weapons to Israel. So taking on the form of Saturn, a block or a blockade by water. In the November forecast, we also reflected on the South Node Libra eclipse on Israel's ascendant as a potential symbol of unraveling diplomatic ties. In the last few weeks, Belize, Chile, Colombia, Bolivia, Turkey, Jordan, and South Africa have all either severed diplomatic ties or recalled their ambassadors.
There seem to be generational and geopolitical schisms opening up around how people see that conflict. And I also wonder how that might affect politics down the line, including in the United States. The middle of November saw a surprising, disruptive, and even violent opposition between Mars and Uranus, which was baked into the new moon on December the 13th, and so into the character of the month following that date. The day of that new moon, a huge split in the Earth opened up in the town of Grindavik, Iceland, and that split served quite well as a metaphor for the other trends that we saw that month.
The new moon opposite Uranus and Taurus, that new moon in Scorpio, there was 4 countries all having volcanic eruptions, something you would think would be right in line with Uranus and Taurus. Surprising surges of instability. So that was Iceland, Italy, Mexico, Japan.
In fact, November provided an object lesson in just how effective astromaps can be. The astromap for the disruptive, violent Uranian new moon on November the 13th had a culmination line running right through the Middle East. Of course, we all heard about the events in Gaza. What was less well reported is how there was also violence across the Middle East, including in Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, where US forces came under repeated attack. And the same map had a rising line that ran very close to Iceland, where the Earth split in two, and Argentina, where the radical and undoubtedly Uranian politician Javier Milei won a general election. We also mentioned the theme of nuclear weapons being a signature of the month. Israel's possession of nuclear weapons and Iran's nuclear program were both in the news.
We saw an Israeli far-right minister talking about dropping a nuclear bomb on Gaza as an option for Israel, as well as Israel dropping greater than 25 kilotons of bombs on the Gaza Strip in a very short period of days, which is the equivalent of more than a Hiroshima bomb.
The US announced a new nuclear weapon 24 times stronger than the Hiroshima bomb. Russia pulled out of a nuclear decommissioning treaty with Japan and announced it had loaded its hypersonic nuclear-capable avant-garde missile in Kazakhstan. At the same time, Venus spent most of the month in her domicile of Libra, and we did eventually see a ceasefire in Gaza, as well as the release of many Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners.
You also, with Venus in Libra, saw President Xi of China meeting with Joe Biden in San Francisco, and there were very kind words exchanged, very optimistic tone for the United States and China and their relationship. So that was very connective and unifying. Venus in Libra indications with international relations, key Libra signatures.
And the Mars Cazimi, which peaked on the 18th of November, was a real knives out moment. We saw it, for example, in the sudden and surprising ousting of Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the world's biggest AI company.
The other thing we saw was Mars Cazimi to the day brought Diddy being sued by Cassie, a former partner of his, in federal court. The papers in that lawsuit are horrific, but basically physical abuse, sexual abuse, really nasty stuff. But on the Mars Cazimi in Scorpio, this kind of deep revelation and secrets that are difficult to describe or talk about emerged.
So with that recap out of the way, let's dive into the astrology of December. If you're enjoying this video, then please do us a favor and click the like button to let YouTube know that. And do subscribe to the channel if you'd like to make sure to watch these forecasts each and every month. On December the 4th, Venus, the planet of unity, beauty, and attraction, leaves its domicile of Libra and enters the sign of Scorpio.
Anytime Venus comes into Scorpio, it follows directly after Venus has risen up and celebrated in Libra. And so it's the morning after. We're facing the repercussions, good or bad, stemming from those pleasures and connections that were enjoyed here in November. I think about it like the deep late nights of an all-night dance party. You're 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning. Maybe you get early breakfast. You're looking for what's open. Maybe you have a sobering dawn where you're reassessing some of the bonds that were formed after a long night of partying. This is kind of that, this doesn't quite feel as good. It felt fun in the moment, but now you're having to get real.
Venus in Scorpio gives us the unique perspective of Venus in detriment. Whenever we have Venus in a Mars-ruled sign, there's an inherent tension around being palatable or being likable. Both Venus in Scorpio and Venus in Aries are a version of Venus where we don't necessarily like what's popular, we don't necessarily find beauty in what's conventional, and we're not necessarily drawn towards mainstream interests. These are both versions of Venus that have a little bit of a provocative or a rough around the edges charm.
Scorpio is the nocturnal and more reflective sign of Mars, the warrior planet. Warriors are vulnerable if they allow any kind of delusion to cloud their vision. And so one way to think about Scorpio is as a sign that's concerned with seeing things as they really are, with stripping away delusion to reveal the truth that lies beneath. When we're relating to others, that can be necessary and important, but it's not always what we're looking for.
Venus in Scorpio wants to get closer to someone by knowing everything about them. It wants the sort of true intimacy that comes from everything being on the table, nothing being concealed. But not everyone always wants the whole truth, right? When you have the whole truth, there can be things in there that repel or that create distrust. So this is why Venus in Scorpio isn't always the easiest transit to navigate or even to have as a natal placement. There's an inherent vulnerability to this expression, a sense of being a little bit exposed. I would say that this transit in December is an opportunity to invite in deeper intimacy with other people, provided that you're willing to move past the initial resistance to that.
Remember, Venus has detriplicity rulership over Scorpio. And I think it can be uniquely situated sometimes, Venus and Scorpio, to pick up the pieces. I think about the pain-pleasure paradox here. The two aren't always as mutually exclusive, and Venus and Scorpio can be finding the joy in facing the challenge and going into the real tough stuff.
So there's a Venus-Jupiter opposition on the 10th that's kind of boosted by this Scorpio moon. And I feel like this could be a moment where we're trying to be more generous with our hearts and also maybe feeling a lot of the discomfort that comes from that. But ultimately, this is an expansive moment.
Last month, we really saw how the new moon, which was tied closely to a Mars-Uranus opposition, colored events around the world. And December will also feature a new moon that's strongly colored by Mars. On December the 12th, we'll see a new moon in Sagittarius. The closest planet aspecting this new moon is Mars. So this is yet another lunation that highlights the planet of action, assertiveness, aggression, and violence.
The new moon in Sagittarius has a really strong Neptunian signature, but one of the other main features is that it's averse to its ruler Jupiter, and pretty much every other traditional planet besides Mars and Saturn. So I think this might be a little bit of a continuation of some of the themes from late November, where the Sagittarian spirit was a little bit deflated and it really needed to harness its capacity to dream and imagine in order to, either escape the problems at hand or at least to provide a little bit of spiritual sustenance to get us through difficult times.
It looks rough. I mean, let's just be honest. This new moon looks a little bit rough. It's a disorientation feeling, potentially, being lost in an unknown urban landscape, if that's ever happened to you. The disquieting experience of being detained at an airport without having the papers you need and having to figure out in a new country, in a new language, what do you do when you're maybe trapped in a liminal space? How am I going to get out of this one? And not knowing or having really any idea how you might get out of a situation, there may be a real need here to surrender into disarray, the disarray that only mutable signs can bring. There's nothing quite like a lot of mutables to kick up dust. I think that dust will eventually settle, though the timing and manner of the resolution might remain elusive here. So keep that in mind, mid-December, planning for Christmas, planning for holidays and other types of vacation. And what if it's just a little bit chaotic with your travel plans or with family arrangements or anything that you're pulled into?
If we look at the astro map for this new moon, we can see that when it goes exact, it will be rising in East Asia, including China. So we may well see that part of the world highlighted in the news in the month that follows this lunation. That said, something that we'll all notice to greater and lesser degrees comes right after the new moon. And it's that wonderful thing that happens 3 times a year that so many astrologers love to hate. It's Mercury retrograde. On December the 13th, Mercury will station retrograde at 8 degrees of Capricorn. Mercury retrogrades happen when Mercury gets much closer to the Earth than usual. And at these times, as you'll likely know, the realm of the mercurial, which includes communication, trade, and technology, tends to go a little haywire.
There are really 2 parts to this Mercury retrograde. There's this relatively constructive beginning when it begins in Capricorn, and then it gets a little bit messier and more chaotic at the end when it backs up into Sagittarius. So Mercury in Capricorn, it takes on the form of a project manager almost. What are the logistics necessary to execute the building plan? Did you order all the necessary supplies, right? Is everything scheduled accordingly? Capricorn also relates to the architecture of time. And anytime Mercury is in Capricorn, which is usually at the end or the beginning of the calendar year, I always think about calendars and yearly planners. People breaking in their new ones for the year ahead, maybe doing a little bit of housekeeping around their schedules.
Mercury retrogrades are always good times to reflect, revise, or rethink. Those things seem to be especially well supported in the first half of this Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, when Mercury receives the support of its ruler Saturn, as well as both the benefic planets Jupiter and Venus.
This can bring things like reviewing workflow and processes, which are Capricornian traits, the mechanisms and foundational structures that power the engines of our lives, recalibrating the cogs and gears of those engines. I mean, this is what I think of Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. It's like opening the hood of your car engine and checking, is everything lubricated? Is everything running properly? This could be things like rereading instruction manuals or ordering new parts that need upgraded or updated. These kinds of check-ins that Mercury retrograde can give us are necessary, especially in Capricorn, which is the cardinal sign of the earth and the rooting and how we function.
The retrograde station on the 13th occurs with Mercury stationing in sextile to Venus. It might look like reaching out to someone, asking someone for a favor, having a Zoom meeting with someone, maybe catching up with someone you haven't seen in a while. Maybe it's because of that exchange that we identify what's broken or incomplete.
I think some people tend to exaggerate the significance of Mercury retrogrades. It's really not any kind of doom-laden scenario, but it certainly can be an annoyance. As always, expect delays, technology snafus, and miscommunications. But you'll be fine, especially if you remember that Mercury retrograde is a time when patience really is a virtue.
I think here the book Walden by Henry David Thoreau, he deliberately retreated into a cabin in the middle of nowhere for about 2 years because he wanted to step back from the daily grind and reflect on existence and reality in life, all the Capricornian, right, the deep structures of reality. It was kind of a personal winter And this aligns with themes of introspection and reevaluation of life structures, the societal constraints. I mean, Capricorn's all about that, how we might be hemmed in by the world around us. These recalibrations can very much support the passionate vigor that will come with that direct station in Sagittarius, where we're now in the outer world.
On December the 22nd, retrograde Mercury will conjoin the Sun, the moment known as the Cazimi.
The Mercury Cazimi happens at 0 degrees of Capricorn, which is the solstice point on the 22nd. The Cazimi in the middle of the Mercury retrograde always marks the midpoint of the journey, and it's usually a point when something is clarified or illuminated that allows the process to resolve itself. Because it's Mercury, this is a moment of gnosis that often occurs in the mind, or maybe it takes the form of an external message. Maybe you receive some sort of omen from the universe.
But things get a bit uglier in this retrograde when Mercury re-enters Sagittarius on December the 23rd.
So when Mercury is in Sagittarius, it likes to gallop in long strides without necessarily minding the details. Maybe there was some sort of big oversight that needs to be corrected, or maybe we didn't express ourselves clearly enough. It might be a recall to some of the things that you were talking about, thinking about, working on, or planning during the second half of November. So there's an especially crunchy moment on the 27th and 28th when Mercury conjoins Mars and they both square Neptune. The 24th and the 25th look potentially problematic too, because there's a Gemini moon that sort of gets into the crosshairs of that and forms a T-square. To me, this kind of looks like stumbling into an argument with someone unintentionally because someone took something the wrong way, or maybe there's pointless bickering that doesn't really solve anything, or maybe loses the plot because Neptune tends to muddle things and lead things astray. I would try to maybe take a beat before responding to something that feels like a provocation around these days. Maybe ask for clarification if something isn't clear.
So if you celebrate Christmas, bear this in mind. You might want to be careful of having a few too many mulled wines or shots of Baileys and deciding to set the world to rights.
In terms of the mundane, having Mars square Neptune with Mercury also in Sagittarius, I think we're going to have a climate of disinformation continue to be perpetuated online. Deceptive narratives of all kinds. Fabricated footage was a big theme in October. I think we might see more of that, where we're having to check, was the footage edited? Where is it from? What is it actually showing? There's also a sense of whipping up advantages in public perception using these kind of deceptive media offerings to endorse martial endeavors. Those all fit here. So be careful this month with Neptune and Mars and Mercury all in hard aspect right here at the end of the month.
But now we'll zoom out a little and focus on our old friend on this channel, Pluto, because towards the end of the month, it enters a crucial phase in its transit through Capricorn. On December the 26th, Pluto enters Capricorn's last degree, known in astrology as the anaretic degree. Pluto will remain in this degree until it enters Aquarius on January the 21st, 2024. So this is probably going to be more relevant to January, but we decided to flag it in this video because Pluto does enter this degree in December.
2008 to 2024, Pluto will have spent time in Capricorn during those years. 2023 to the early 2040s is Pluto in Aquarius. And so that's the larger context. It's these larger chunks of Pluto doing a sign change. Remember, anaretic degrees are notorious for eliciting extreme responses. It's like filling a brimming cup, right? You're trying to fill every last drop of a cup that's already full, and that can destabilize and sometimes spill over.
Planets at the 29th degree, especially outer planets at the 29th degree, really bring home this notion that the season finale is often the most dramatic and intense part of the story.
A slow-moving planet like Pluto entering the last degree of a sign is pretty significant. There's a sense of urgency, but perhaps also excess when a planet reaches the last degree. It's as if this is its last chance for it to get something done. There may be some haste or intensity.
When you think about Pluto then, with the depth charge that Pluto brings, the destruction and recreation, it can maybe be a little bit unstable here. These are longer term transits, these outer planet transits. And you might think about larger turns of your life or in the collective, with Pluto regenerating one area since 2008 and now getting ready to turn its powers to build and transform another. Watch for the conclusion this 20 December into the first part of January 2024 of that story in your Capricorn house. What kind of deep containers of life and materiality, how have they been restructured with Pluto being there for so long? And then preparing for the major story of 2024, which is where will we now implement some innovation in another sector of our chart, that Saturn-ruled sector of our charts and lives.
Pluto's currently in the last Egyptian bound or term of Capricorn, which belongs to our friend Mars. If you don't know anything about the Egyptian bounds, then I recommend you watch this video, in which I explain what they're all about and what Pluto has done in the bounds of Capricorn since 2008. Pluto has been in the Egyptian bound of Mars on and off since February 2021, when Russia began building up forces on the border of Ukraine. And since that time, we saw how the world's major concern shifted from the pandemic to armed conflict. Capricorn is a sign of big institutions and the established order. Pluto's transit through that sign has, for many people, exposed various contradictions and injustices related to that order. In many parts of the world, there's a lot more cynicism about the institutions of the state on all sides of the political spectrum.
With Pluto and Capricorn, we've seen a lot of institutional failure. We've seen, the exposure of corruption among leaders and the wealthy elite. We've seen, more clearly the way that the perpetual war machine and the protection of empire drain our resources in order to make a few people rich.
And in terms of the outer world, so much has been said about Pluto in Capricorn and then into Aquarius. Dan and I have done a few videos on it. The major themes, though, in my view, if I had to summarize and pick one or two, is the rise of AI, displacing jobs, creating the ability to code very easily or to create animation or high-end digital artistry and video in real time, connecting people in the world through instant language translation. There's so much that the AI is doing and has done with Pluto and Aquarius here in 2023 that's getting ready to transform the whole world. We're in the transition. Pluto in the anaretic degree might be more of that destructive feature. So check the headlines around AI. How is it displacing people? And the other big story is the shifting geopolitical landscape of 2023, the rise of the BRICS, two major wars, Ukraine and Palestine, Israel, and how those wars have created divisions amongst nations and new alliances and have centered the need for countries to talk to each other and think about weaponry and who is the ally and the enemy. All of those conversations about geopolitics are highly relevant. As we know, Pluto and Aquarius is about new worlds and new geopolitical fault lines being created as the world kind of gets turned on its head. The margins become the center.
To borrow a favorite image of the philosopher Slavoj Žižek, the situation rather resembles Wile E. Coyote running on air. That's the image that comes to mind with Pluto at the anaretic degree of Capricorn, poised to move into Aquarius, where the old will make way for the new. But don't worry, we're not going to leave you with that image, because there is actually some genuinely lovely astrology rounding the month off. On December the 31st, New Year's Eve, Jupiter, the planet of growth, truth, and optimism, stations direct at 5 degrees of Taurus. But we can consider Jupiter to be stationing well before that precise moment. It will be in that degree for the second half of December.
Remember, Jupiter entered Taurus in May 2023, and it won't leave until May 2024. So there's a longer chunk here of opportunity that Jupiter has signified. This is the only direct station of Jupiter during its time in Taurus. And so it offers a distinct opportunity right here at the end of December to deeply experience and understand the unique qualities and influence of this phase.
The planet that's stationing direct is strengthened. And if you're lucky enough to have personal planets at 5 Taurus or in close aspect with that degree, there's a good chance you might feel like fortune is favoring you around this time.
I think we might have some really lovely moments over the holidays, maybe opportunities to lift our spirits or even to be with our grief in a way that moves those emotions through us and makes us feel more connected to each other. There's a sense that we're closing out the year on a high note, or at least greeting 2024 with hope.
It's also important to note that 5 Taurus is the degree at which we saw the challenging lunar eclipse of late October.
So this is not only representative of stalled momentum from September starting to move forward again, but might also move things along that are connected to that Taurus eclipse story.
If the Taurus sector has had reverberations of impact from that final lunar eclipse, look for this direct station of Jupiter, 31 December, to settle even further or to reveal deeper wisdom around those events or why certain things happen the way they did. Jupiter is a planet of revelation, justice, wisdom, truth. All of those things could be in play here.
We already saw how the Gemini moon from December the 24th looks like it may be challenging, but on December the 26th, the moon moves into its domicile of Cancer, and soon after that, we get a full moon in that sign.
That full moon in Cancer forms an exact sextile within 1 degree to Jupiter and Taurus. And Jupiter and Taurus and the moon full in Cancer form a mutual reception via exaltation. So it's very optimistic, the tone that's being set here as we get into the week before Christmas and New Year's.
Full moons can sometimes be moments of celebration or gathering with other people. This one looks like a moment where we're, maybe surrounded by family or a close circle of friends.
The chaos of the year has a very nice end here of reassurance, but the chaos of that mutable new moon in Sagittarius and Mars and Saturn squaring in mutables, that has some kind of comforting realization here of well-being that we can settle into and enjoy right as the year closes and right as the month closes. Symbolically, it brings us into the realm of revelations and enlightenments concerning sensual gratification. Certainly that's a Taurian theme. Physical existence is also Taurus. It's a fixed earth sign. You might check in with your materiality and the tangible aspects of your life. Think about what Jupiter can do. It can emphasize our abilities to craft and relish in life's pleasures and delights. It can give us a sense of we have enough, we are enough, the people around us love us and nurture us, our life is enough. I think this might be termed as a gratitude moment, right at the end of the year. What have you been grateful for in 2023? All the ups and downs. This would be a perfect time to reflect on the joys and the high points and set yourself up for 2024 with some of that positive projection and that touching base with the optimistic moments.
I'm really liking the astrology of New Year's Eve overall. There's going to be a grand Earth trine between the moon in Virgo, the sun in Capricorn, and Jupiter in Taurus. So this is getting ahead a little bit into January, but Mercury is also going to be stationing direct on the 2nd. So New Year's Eve actually has a very move forward, turn over a new leaf kind of vibe that for once syncs the symbolism of the Gregorian calendar with the astrological one. I think whatever the past year has brought us, this is a really grounded moment of optimism and celebration, one that doesn't necessarily gloss over the reality, but also isn't constrained by it. Even if you're not someone who necessarily believes in resolutions or goal setting, maybe you're going to make an exception this year, or maybe you'll feel moved to name some of the things that you're inspired to cultivate in the new year.
See, it's not all doom and gloom on this channel. Now, before we go, just a reminder that all three of us are consulting astrologers. I'm currently taking bookings for January consultations, so you can book a natal or electional slot with me on my website, danwaitesastrology.com.
All right, so good to see everybody. You can check in with my streams. They're still going strong. Just come to my YouTube channel, doing 2 a month, and they've been real interactive, so I like that. If you want to show up and make some comments, I'll hopefully get to a few of those. We can talk about the astrology as it's unfolding. Come hang with me, come hang with us there. I'll announce when those streams happen on X Twitter, so you can follow me there, or also on my YouTube channel. I'll schedule them and they'll appear in the feed a few days before, so subscribe to my channel there for those. You can always check out my website as well, sjanderson144.com. Links to all my social media and information about the natal chart readings I offer and information about the ongoing astrology as it's unfolding. So thanks a lot. We'll talk to everybody soon. Have a wonderful December and peace, everyone.
So I am currently beginning to book consultations for January. So if you're eager to grab a year ahead reading to see what 2024 has in store for you, go ahead and grab a spot.
Now in January 2024, as we mentioned, Pluto will be moving back into the sign of Aquarius. If you're wondering what that means, then I'd suggest you watch this video in which SJ and I looked at what happened earlier in 2023 when Pluto spent several weeks in that sign, and we considered what that told us about Pluto's forthcoming 20-year transit through Aquarius. Thanks for joining us again, and see you next time.